What up, conquistadors? Welcome to Conk's Corner once more, the hour of every weekday where I read Harry Potter for the very first time with a community of Potterheads, which I could probably count myself to now. I have not read the books before. Please don't spoil anything in the chat or in the comments on YouTube, because this is a joyful experience. It brings me joy, and we're also ready to get conked. I don't really like what that sounds like, but yeah, let's get conked, hey? So I got little Dexy here up on my on the bed, so you can see him here in frame. This is my dog, Dexter. I saw today that there's a new Harry Potter RPG game coming out, a video game. Of course, I didn't like click on the video or anything like that because I thought, what if they give details away of what happened or what will happen or something like that? But I just know there's one coming. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe I'll play it after all this is done. I hope you had a good day off. I didn't read yesterday, and I will not be reading tomorrow either. We're having a little welcome celebration for the little bebe that's arriving here in the house. I live in community with other people. So, yeah, we won't be reading tomorrow, but I'll be back on Friday. So this is a shortened read week, but hopefully next week it'll be more consistent. Where did you see it? I saw it on just gaming websites. Just type it in. You'll find it on there. Okay, so the last thing that happened was that Harry and Dumbledore, you know, after the last book, after their long, heavy discussion that they had, this is their first time back together, and Harry doesn't seem to have any leftover feelings of anger towards Voldemort. Of course, towards Voldemort, but towards Dumbledore. And they are going to... what's this village called? Let's call it Village Baba Ganoush. That's what it is. I forget. It's something that start with B, to visit a dude. And they were just about to go into the house, but he's saying, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. There's something probably devastated within that building. So, let's find out what's happening in the village of Baba Ganoush. Gonna put on my my glasses and my scar. I might not see it well enough with the hat today. There we go. And let's get started, shall we? Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince! Alright. Starting with Dumbledore. Wand out and follow me, Harry, he said quietly. Oh, I'm just gonna scoot up a bit. There we go. Okay, now I'm comfortable. He opened the gate and walked swiftly and silently up the garden path, Harry at his heels, then pushed the front door very slowly, his wand raised and at the ready. Oh, let's get some creepy music going on. Lumos. Dumbledore's wand tip ignited, casting its light up a narrow hallway. To the left, another door stood open. Holding his illuminated wand aloft, Dumbledore walked into the sitting room with Harry right behind him. A scene of total devastation met their eyes. A grandfather clock lay splintered at their feet. All right, it's also nighttime. Its face cracked, its pendulum lying a little further away like a dropped sword. A piano was on its side, its keys strewn across the floor. The wreckage of a fallen chandelier glittered nearby. Cushions lay defeated. An open chest lay expectant. Oh, please come over here and check out what's inside me. Oh, are you going to open my lid? Please open my lid. Anyway, that's not in the book. Cushions lay deflated, feathers oozing from slashes in their sides, fragments of glass and china lay like powder over everything. Dumbledore raised his wand even higher, so that its light was thrown upon the walls, where something darkly red and glutinous was splattered over the wallpaper. Harry's small intake of breath made Dumbledore look around. Not pretty, is it? He said heavily. Yes. Something horrible has happened here. Dumbledore moved carefully into the middle of the room, scrutinizing the wreckage at his feet. Harry followed, gazing around, half scared of what he might see hidden behind the wreck of the piano or the overturned sofa. But there was no sign of a body. Maybe there was a fight and they dragged him off, Professor, Harry suggested, trying not to imagine how badly wounded a man would have to be to leave those stains battered halfway up the halls. Prepare your adjectives, people. A little bit of a spoiler. Not really, but I know now somebody's coming, right? I had no idea this existed. Kevin Harwood. Hey, Kevin. Kevin's a buddy of mine. Good to see you here. Don't worry, this is just the presentation, so we'll have enough publicity from here to come out. The chest trunk voice. Hey, John. Hi, Rachel. Okay, let's keep going. I don't think so, said Dumbledore quietly, peering behind an overstuffed armchair laying on its side. You mean he's still here somewhere? Yes. And without warning, Dumbledore swooped, plunging the tip of his wand into the seat of the overstuffed armchair, which yelled, "Ouch!" Okay, so throw some adjectives at me for this person. Whoever this person is, just adjectives based on the books, not on the movies. And I don't need any other descriptions unless I ask for it, but just adjectives for this person. Flabby, pompous, jovial, bumbling. Oh, okay. Flabby, pompous, stubborn. IKEA. Cool. Thank you for that adjective of IKEA. Stubborn, flabby, pompous, jovial, bumbling, old, comfortable, friendly, a little snobby, a collector. Good evening, Horace, said Dumbledore, straightening up again. Harry's jaw dropped. Where a split second before there had been an armchair, there now crouched an enormously fat, bald old man, who was massaging his lower belly and squinting up at Dumbledore with an aggrieved and watery eye, like your jolly uncle who likes to get drunk at Christmas. Charismatic. So bubbly, comfortable, friendly, a little snobby, maybe like this. Oh, yeah, a little bit like this guy. Oh, okay. Pompous. There we go. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why he makes those noises already. There was no need to stick the wand in that hard, he said gruffly, clambering to his feet. It hurt. The wand light. Yep. Quite proper, though. Okay, I think like a smart Toodles from Hook. Again, no other descriptions. I just asked for adjectives, please. I don't even know who Toodles is. The wand light sparkled on his shiny pate, his prominent eyes, his enormous silver walrus-like mustache. Oh, great. And the highly polished buttons on the maroon velvet jacket he was wearing over a pair of lilac silk pajamas. The top of his head barely reached Dumbledore's chin. Okay, here we go. What gave it away? What gave it away? He grunted as he staggered to his feet. Quite proper. Whoa, where, hi. Something like that. Still rubbing his lower belly. He seemed remarkably unabashed for a man who had just been discovered pretending to be an armchair. My dear Horace, said Dumbledore, looking amused. If the Death Eaters really had come to call, the dark mark would have been set over the house. The wizard clapped a pudgy hand to his vast forehead. That's the one? Okay, this is beautiful, John. Good. Good, it works out then. He's very old, too. All right. Right, old. The wizard clapped a pudgy hand to his vast forehead. Old. The dark mark. No. The dark mark, he whispered. Knew there was something. I knew there was something. Oh, well. There we are. A bit lower. There. Oh, well. Wouldn't have had time anyway. I'd only just put the finishing touches to my upholstery when you entered the room. He heaved a great sigh that made the ends of his mustache flutter. Brrr. Would you like my assistance clearing up? Asked Dumbledore politely. Please, said the other. Pompous Santa, 5 stars. Another supercut needed. All right, cool. That works out. They stood back to back, the tall, thin wizard and the short, round one, and waved their wands in one identical sweeping motion. The furniture flew back to its original place. Ornaments reformed in midair. Feathers zoomed into their cushions. Torn books repaired themselves as they landed upon their shelves. Oil lanterns soared onto side tables and reignited. A vast collection of splintered silver picture frames flew glittering across the room and alighted, whole and untarnished, upon a desk. Rips, cracks, and holes heaved everywhere, and the walls wiped themselves clean. I wish I could clean my room like that. This is freaking awesome. You always find just the right one. Okay, except the centaurs. I think the centaurs are my masterpiece. I nailed their voices perfectly. Kenton! Is there ever a voice that's hard to switch from, like right now going back and forth between Dumbledore and Slughorn? We'll see. Maybe it is hard. Sometimes it is. Yeah. Okay.
What kind of blood was that, incidentally?
Asked Dumbledore. Oh,
What kind of blood was that, incidentally?
asked Dumbledore loudly over the chiming of the newly unsmashed grandfather clock.
On the walls! Dragon!
Shouted the wizard, called Horace, as with a deafening grinding and tinkling, the chandelier screwed itself back into the ceiling. There was a final plunk from the piano and silence.
Yes! Yes! Ho, ho! Ho, ho! I'm just going to do Santa Claus! Santa Claus! There we go. Yes! Dragon!
Repeated the wizard conversationally.
My last bottle.
I'm making it a bit Scottish, but maybe that fits.
My last bottle. And prices are sky high at the moment. Still, might be reusable.
Maybe. He stumped over to a small crystal bottle standing on top of a sideboard and held it up to the light, examining the thick liquid within.
It's a bit dusty.
He set the bottle back on the sideboard and sighed.
Ay.
It was then that his gaze fell upon Harry.
Oh!
He said, his large round eyes flying to Harry's forehead and the lightning-shaped scar it bore.
Oh! Oh! This,
said Dumbledore, moving forwards to make the introduction,
is Harry Potter. Harry, this is an old friend and colleague of mine, Horace Slughorn.
Slughorn turned on Dumbledore, his expression shrewd.
So, that's how you thought you'd persuade me, is it? Well, the answer's no, Albus.
He pushed past Harry, his face turned resolutely away with the air of a man trying to resist temptation.
I suppose we can have a drink, at least,
asked Dumbledore.
for old time's sake.
Slughorn hesitated. I want to give Slughorn more depth.
All right then. One drink,
he said ungraciously. Still finding him.
I'm finding him. I am finding Slughorn. I have looked in every crevice and corner for Slughorn.
Dumbledore smiled at Harry and directed him towards a chair, not unlike the one that Slughorn had so recently impersonated, which stood right beside the newly burning fire and brightly glowing oil lamp. Harry took the seat with a distinct impression that Dumbledore, for some reason, wanted to keep him as visible as possible. Certainly, when Slughorn, who had been busy with decanters and glasses, turned to face the room again, his eyes fell immediately upon Harry. Looks like you're milking him. Maybe I am.
Humph,
he said, looking at
humph, humph. Maybe he's like this. Hey, I'll try that.
he said, looking away quickly as though frightened of hurting his eyes.
Here.
He gave a drink to Dumbledore, who had sat down without invitation, thrust the tray at Harry, and then sank into the cushions of the repaired sofa and a disgruntled silence. His legs were so short that they did not touch the floor.
Well, how have you been keeping, Horace?
Dumbledore asked.
Not so well,
said Slughorn at once.
Weak chest, wheezy, rheumatism too. Can't move like I used to. Well, that's to be expected. Old age. Fatigue. And yet you must have moved fairly quickly to prepare such a welcome for us at such short notice,
said Dumbledore.
You can't have had more than 3 minutes warning.
Slughorn said, half irritably, half proudly.
Tuh! Didn't hear my intruder charm go off. I was taking a bath. Still,
he added sternly, seeming to pull himself back together again.
The fact remains that I am an old man, Albus. A tired old man who's earned the right to a quiet life and a few creature comforts.
It's not that sharp, though. He certainly had those, thought Harry, looking around the room. It was stuffy and cluttered, yet nobody could say it was uncomfortable. There were soft chairs and footstools, drinks and books, boxes of chocolates and plump cushions. If Harry had not known who lived there, he would have guessed at a rich, fussy lady. Jolly. Okay, cool.
You're not as old as I am, Horace,
said Dumbledore.
Well, maybe you ought to think about retirement yourself,
said Slughorn bluntly. His pale gooseberry eyes had found Dumbledore's injured hand.
Reaction's not what they were, I see.
You're quite right, said Dumbledore serenely, shaking back his sleeve to reveal the tips of those burned and blackened fingers. The sight of them made the back of Harry's neck prickle unpleasantly. We don't need this music anymore because it's not creepy. The sight of them made that...
I am undoubtedly slower than I was, but on the other hand...
He shrugged and spread his hands wide, as though to say that age had its compensations. And Harry... Slughorn just wants to chill, probably smoke a little something. Harry noticed a ring on his uninjured hand that he had never seen Dumbledore wear before.
He got married!
It was large, rather clumsily made of what looked like gold, and was set with a heavy black stone that had cracked down the middle. Slughorn's eyes lingered for a moment on the ring too, and Harry saw a tiny frown momentarily crease his wide forehead.
So, all these precautions against intruders, Horace, are they for the Death Eater's benefit, or mine?
Asked Dumbledore.
What would the Death Eaters want with a poor, broken-down old buffer like me?
Demanded Slughorn.
I imagine that they would want you to turn your considerable talents to coercion, torture, and murder, said Dumbledore. Are you really telling me that they haven't come recruiting yet?
Slughorn eyed Dumbledore balefully for a moment, then muttered,
I haven't given them the chance. I've been on the move for a year. Never stay in one place more than a week. Move from Muggle House to Muggle House. The owners of this place are on holiday in the Canary Islands. It's been very pleasant. I'll be sorry to leave. It's quite easy once you know how. One simple freezing charm on these absurd burglar alarms they use instead of sneakoscopes, and make sure the neighbours don't spot you bringing in the piano. Ingenious, said Dumbledore. But it sounds a rather...
oh, that's going to be hard to switch between.
It sounds a rather tiring experience for a broken-down old buffer in search for a quiet life. Now, if you were to return to Hogwarts... If you're going to tell me my life would be more peaceful at that pestilential school, you can save your breath, Albus. I might have been hiding, but some funny rumours have reached me since Dolores Umbridge left. That's how you treat teachers these days. Professor Umbridge ran afoul of her centre herd, said Dumbledore. I think you, Horace, would have known better than to stride into the forest and call a horde of angry centaurs filthy half-breeds. That's what she did she? Said Slughorn. Idiotic woman. Never liked her.
I feel like he's always making noises all the time. Harry chuckled, and both Dumbledore and Slughorn looked round at him. Sorry, Harry said hastily. Just, I didn't like her either. Dumbledore stood up rather suddenly.
Are you leaving?
Said Slughorn at once, looking hopeful.
No, I was wondering whether I might use your bathroom,
said Dumbledore.
Oh,
said Slughorn, clearly disappointed.
Second on the left down the hall.
I don't know why I feel he always makes noises. Toilet time!
When you gotta go, it's toilet time. It's toilet time.
Dumbledore crossed the room. Once the door had closed behind him, there was a silence. After a few moments, Slughorn got to his feet, but seemed uncertain what to do with himself. You shut up. He's probably doing this on Dumbledore left on purpose so that Slughorn has to talk to Harry and say yes because he sees the strength in Harry. After a few moments, Slughorn got to his feet but seemed uncertain what to do with himself. He shot a furtive look at Harry and strode to the fire and turned his back on it, warming his behind.
Don't think I don't know why he's brought you,
he said abruptly. Harry merely looked at Slughorn. Slughorn's watery eyes slid over Harry's scar, this time taking in the rest of his face.
You looked very like your father.
Yeah, I've been told, said Harry.
Except for your eyes. You've got...
My mother's eyes. My mother's eyes. Yeah. Harry had heard it before so often he found it a bit wearing.
Yes, well, you shouldn't have favourites as a teacher, of course, but she was one of mine. Your mother,
Slughorn added in answer to Harry's questioning look.
Lily Evans, one of the brightest I ever taught. Vivacious, you know. Charming girl. I used to tell her she ought to have been in my house. Very cheeky answer. Cheeky answers I used to get back to.
Which was your house?
I was head of Slytherin,
said Slughorn.
Oh, now,
he went on quickly, seeing the expression on Harry's face and wagging a stubby finger at him.
Don't go holding that against me. You'll be Gryffindor like her, I suppose. Yes. Usually goes in families. Not always, though. Never heard of Sirius Black? Oh, you must have done. Been in the papers for the last couple of years. Died a few weeks ago.
It was though an invisible hand had twisted Harry's intestines and held them tight. Getting a little Scrooge McDuck. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Well, anyway, he was a big pal of your father's at school. The whole Black family had been in my house, but Sirius ended up in Gryffindor. Shame. He was a talented boy. I got his brother Regulus when he came along, but I'd have liked the set.
He sounded like an enthusiastic collector who had been outbid at auction. Apparently, lost in memories, he gazed at the opposite wall, turning idly on the spot to ensure an even heat on his backside.
Your mother was Muggle-born, of course. Couldn't believe it when I find out. Thought she must have been pure blood. She was so good. Good! She was so good!
Got mixed up there. One of my best friends is Muggle-born, said Harry, and she's the best in our year.
Funny. Now that sometimes happens. Happens, isn't it?
Said Slughorn. Not really, said Harry coldly. Slughorn looked down at him in surprise.
You mustn't think I'm prejudiced. You mustn't think I'm prejudiced. Oh, you mustn't think I'm prejudiced, he said. No. No. Haven't I just said your mother was one of my old-time favourite students? And there was Dirk Cresswell in the year after her too. Now head of the Goblin Liaison Office, of course. Another Muggle-born, very gifted student, and still gives me excellent inside information on the going-ons at Gringotts. He bounced up and down a little bit, smiling in a self-satisfied way, and pointed at the many glittering photograph frames on the dresser, each people with tiny moving occupants. All ex-students, all signed. You'll notice Barnabas Coffey, editor of the Daily Prophet. He's always interested to hear my take on the day's news. And Ambrosius Flume of Honeydukes, a hamper every birthday. And all because I was able to give him an introduction to Cicerin Harkis, who gave him the first job. And at the back, you'll see her if you just crane your neck. That's Gwynog Jones, who of course captains the Holy Head Harpies. Ooh, people are always astonished to hear I'm on first name terms with the Harpies, and free tickets whenever I want them.
This thought seemed to cheer him up enormously.
And all these people know where to find you.
Oh no, wait, and all these people know where to find you, to send you stuff, asked Harry, could not help wondering why the Death Eaters had not yet tracked down Slughorn, if hampers of sweets, Quidditch tickets, and visitors craving his advice and opinions could find him. Loopier by the moment. Yeah, he is a bit loopy, huh? Pompous, yeah. The smile slid from Slughorn's face as quickly as the blood from his walls. Oh, yeah.
Of course not,
He said, looking down at Harry.
I've been out of touch with everybody for a year.
Harry had the impression that the words shocked Slughorn himself. He looked quite unsettled for a moment. Then he shrugged.
Still, the prudent wizard keeps his head down in such times. All very well for Dumbledore to talk, but taking up a post at Hogwarts just now would be tantamount to declaring my public allegiance to the Order of the Phoenix. And while I'm sure they're very admirable and brave and all the rest of it, I don't personally fancy the morality rate.
You don't have to join the Order to teach at Hogwarts, said Harry, who could not quite keep a note of derision out of his voice. It was hard to sympathize with Slughorn's cosseted existence when he remembered Sirius, crouching in a cave and living on rats. Most of the teachers aren't in it, and none of them has ever been killed. Well, unless you count Quirrell, and he got what he deserved, seeing as he was working with Voldemort. Harry had been sure Slughorn would have been one of those wizards who could not bear to hear Voldemort's name spoken aloud, and was not disappointed. Slughorn gave a shudder and a squawk of protest, which Harry ignored. I reckon the staff are safer than most people while Dumbledore's headmaster. He's supposed to be the only one who Voldemort ever feared, isn't he? Harry went on. Slughorn gazed into space for a moment or two. He seemed to be thinking over Harry's words.
Well, yes, it is true that he who must not be named has never sat a fight with Dumbledore,
He muttered grudgingly.
and I suppose one could argue that as I have not joined the Death Eaters, he who must not be named can hardly count me as a friend. In which case, I might well be safer a little closer to Albus. I cannot pretend that Amelia Bourne's death did not shake me. If she, with all her ministry contacts and protection...
Dumbledore re-entered the room, and Slughorn jumped as though he had forgotten he was in the house.
Oh, there you are, Albus, he said. You've been a very long time. Upset stomach? No, I was merely reading the Muggle magazines.
Of course they have Muggle magazines in the bathroom, said Dumbledore.
I do love knitting patterns. Well, Harry, we have trespassed upon Horace's hospitality quite long enough. I think it is time for us to leave.
Not at all reluctant to obey, Harry jumped to his feet. Slughorn seemed taken aback.
You're leaving? Yes, indeed. I think I know a lost cause when I see one. Lost?
Slughorn seemed agitated. He twiddled his fat thumbs and fidgeted as he watched Dumbledore fastening his traveling cloak and Harry zipping up his jacket.
Wait, well, I'm sorry you don't want the job, Horace,
said Dumbledore, raising his uninjured hand in a farewell salute.
Hogwarts would have been glad to see you back again. Our greatly increased security notwithstanding, you will always be welcome to visit, should you wish to. Yes, well, very gracious. As I say, goodbye then.
Bye, said Harry. They were at the front door when there was a shout from behind them.
All right. I'll do it.
Dumbledore turned to see Slughorn standing breathless in the doorway to the sitting room.
You will come out of retirement? Yes, said
Slughorn impatiently.
I must be mad. But yes. Wonderful,
said Dumbledore, beaming.
Then, Horace, we shall see you on the 1st of September. Yes, I dare say you will,
grunted Slughorn. As they set off down the garden path, Slughorn's voice floated out after them.
I want a pay raise, Dumbledore.
Dumbledore chuckled. The garden gate swung shut behind them, and they set off back down the hill through the dark and the swirling mist.
Well done, Harry,
said Dumbledore. I didn't do anything, said Harry in surprise. Harry Potter and he escaped Sirius Black and a werewolf? I didn't do anything, said Harry in surprise.
Oh, yes, you did. You showed Horace exactly how much he stands to gain by returning to Hogwarts. Did you like him?
Harry wasn't sure whether he liked Slughorn or not. See, I knew Dumbledore walked away. Not really a premonition because it's actively happening. He supposed he had been pleasant in his way, but he had also seemed vain and, whatever he said to the contrary, much too surprised that a Muggle-born should make a good witch.
Horace,
said Dumbledore, relieving Harry of the responsibility to say any of this,
likes his comfort. He also likes the company of the famous, the successful, and the powerful. He enjoys the feeling that he influences those people.
Just looking at Dexter.
He has never wanted to occupy the throne himself. He prefers the back seat, more room to spread out, you see. He used to handpick favourites at Hogwarts, sometimes for their ambition or their brains, sometimes for their charm or their talent. And he had an uncanny knack for choosing those who would go on to become outstanding in their various fields. Horace formed a kind of club of his favourites, with himself at the centre, making introductions, forging useful contacts between members, and always reaping some kind of benefits in return, whether a free box of his favourite crystallized pineapple, or the chance to recommend the next junior member of the Goblin Liaison Liaison Office.
Oh, so he's a networker. We got a networker, a businessman. Huh? Harry had a sudden and vivid mental image of a great swollen spider spinning a web around him, twitching a thread there and here and there to bring its large and juicy flies a little closer.
I tell you all this,
Dumbledore continued,
not to turn you against Horace, or, as we may now call him, Professor Slughorn, but to put you on your guard. He will undoubtedly try to collect you, Harry. You would be the jewel of his collection, the boy who lived, or, as they call you these days, the chosen one.
At these words, a chill that had nothing to do with the surrounding mist stole over Harry. He was reminded of words he had heard a few weeks ago, words that had a horrible and particular meaning to him. Neither can live while the other survives. That's part of the prophecy. Dumbledore had stopped walking, level with the church they had passed earlier.
This will do, Harry. If you will grasp my arm.
Braced this time, Harry was ready for the apparition, but still found it unpleasant. When the pressure disappeared and he found himself able to breathe again, he was standing in a country lane beside Dumbledore and looked ahead to the crooked silhouettes of his second favorite building in the world, the Burrow, in spite of the feeling of dread that had just swept through him. His spirits could not help but lift at the sight of it. Ron was in there, and so was Mrs. Weasley, who could cook better than anyone he knew. Oh, sweet. I'm excited to go back there.
If you don't mind, Harry,
said Dumbledore as they passed through the gate.
I'd like a few words with you before we part, in private. Perhaps in here?
Dumbledore pointed towards a run-down stone outhouse where the Weasleys kept their broomsticks. A little puzzled, Harry followed Dumbledore through a creaking door into a space a little smaller than the average cupboard. Dumbledore illuminated the tip of his wand so that it glowed like a torch and smiled down at Harry.
I hope you will forgive me for mentioning it, Harry. But I am pleased and a little proud at how well you seem to be coping after everything that happened at the Ministry. Permit me to say that I think Sirius would have been proud of you.
That's sweet. Harry swallowed. His voice seemed to have deserted him. He did not think he could stand to discuss Sirius. It had been painful enough to hear Uncle Vernon say, His godfather's dead. Even worse to hear Sirius's name thrown out casually by Slughorn.
It was cruel,
said Dumbledore softly.
that you and Sirius had such a short time together. A brutal ending to what should have been a long and happy relationship.
Ooh, that's so sad. Harry nodded, his eyes fixed resolutely on the spider now climbing Dumbledore's hat. He could tell that Dumbledore understood, that he might even suspect that until his letter arrived, Harry had spent nearly all his time at the Dursleys, lying on his bed, refusing meals and staring at the misted window, full of the chill emptiness that he had come to associate with Dementors. It's just hard, Harry said finally, in a low voice, to realize he won't write to me again. His eyes burned suddenly, and he blinked. He felt stupid for admitting it. But the fact that he had had someone outside Hogwarts who cared what happened to him, almost like a parent, had been one of the best things about discovering his godfather. And now the post owls would never bring him that comfort again.
Sirius represented much to you that you had never known before,
said Dumbledore gently.
Naturally, the loss is devastating.
But while I was at the Dursleys, interrupted Harry, his voice growing stronger, I realized I can't shut myself away or crack up. Sirius wouldn't have wanted that, would he? And anyway, life's too short. Look at Madame Bones. Look at Emmeline Vance. It could be me next, couldn't it? But if it is, he said fiercely, now looking straight into Dumbledore's blue eyes, gleaming in the wand light, I'll make sure I take as many Death Eaters with me as I can, and Voldemort too, if I can manage it.
Spoken both like your mother and father's son and Sirius's true godson,
said Dumbledore, with an approving pat on Harry's back.
I take my hat off to you, or I would, if I were not afraid of showering you in spiders. And now, Harry, on a closely related subject. I gather that you have been taking the Daily Prophet over the last 2 weeks.
Yes, said Harry, and his heart beat a little faster.
Then you will have seen that there have been not so much leaks as floods concerning your adventure in the Hall of Prophecy.
Yes, said Harry again, and now everyone knows that I'm the one.
No, they do not,
interrupted Dumbledore.
There are only 2 people in the whole world who know the full contents of the prophecy made about you and Lord Voldemort, and they are both standing in this smelly, spidery broom shed. It is true, however, that many have guessed correctly that Voldemort sent his Death Eaters to steal a prophecy, and that the prophecy concerned you. Now, I think I am correct in saying that you have not told anybody that you know what the prophecy said.
No, said Harry.
A wise decision, on the whole,
said Dumbledore.
Although I think you ought to relax it in favour of your friends, Mr. Ronald Weasley and Miss Hermione Granger.
Yes, he continued, when Harry looked startled.
I think they ought to know. You do them a disservice by not confiding something this important to them.
I didn't want
to worry or frighten them,
said Dumbledore, surveying Harry over the top of his half-moon spectacles.
Or perhaps to confess that you yourself are worried and frightened. You need your friends, Harry. As you so rightly said, Sirius would not have wanted you to shut yourself away.
This is awesome. Love this. They don't have to go into that same, they've gone there before with Harry hiding from his friends and hiding things. And we're all anxious inside. Oh, should I? But I want to tell them, but I can't. So they're going a different track now. It's great. The situation has changed. Relationship has changed. Dumbledore knowing what's going on in Harry's head and taking that anxiety away from him because he loves him so damn much. It's great. Great decisions all around. Harry said nothing, but Dumbledore did not seem to require an answer. He continued.
On a different, though related subject, it is my wish that you take private lessons with me this year.
Yes! Good. Private? With you, said Harry, surprised. I think his voice is getting a little deeper. How old is he now? Wait, 16? He's 16, right? I think he's 16. Or yeah, said Harry, surprised out of his preoccupied silence. 16.
Yes, I think it is time that I took a greater hand in your education.
What will you be teaching me, sir?
Oh, a little of this, a little of that,
said Dumbledore airily. I can't wait. Harry waited hopefully, but Dumbledore did not elaborate. So he asked something else that had been bothering him slightly. If I'm having lessons with you, I won't have to do occlumency lessons with Snape, will I?
Professor Snape, Harry? And no, you will not.
Good, said Harry in relief, because they were up. He stopped, careful not to say what he really thought.
I think the word fiasco would be a good one here,
said Dumbledore, nodding. Harry laughed.
Dumbledore! You did a joke, Dumbledore!
That's how Harry laughs. He's about to turn the sweet 16. Harry-Dumbledore relations is one of my favorite things about the series. Can't help but love Dumbledore. Very true. Cannot help. Well, that means I won't see much of Professor Snape from now on, he said, because he won't let me carry on potions unless I get an outstanding in my owl, which I know I haven't.
Don't count your owls before they're delivered.
It's almost like, don't count your eggs before they're hatched, said Dumbledore gravely.
Which, now I think of it, ought to be sometime later today. Now, 2 more things, Harry, before we part.
2 more?
Firstly, I wish you to keep your invisibility cloak with you at all times from this moment onwards, even within Hogwarts itself, just in case. You understand me?
Harry nodded.
And lastly, while you stay here, the Burrow has been given the highest security the Ministry of Magic can provide. These measures have caused a certain amount of inconvenience to Arthur and Molly. All their post, for instance, is being searched at the Ministry before being sent on. They do not mind in the slightest, but their only concern is your safety. However, it would be poor repayment if you risked your neck while staying with them.
I understand, said Harry quickly.
Very well, then,
said Dumbledore, pushing open the broom shed door and stepping out into the yard.
I see a light in the kitchen. Let us not deprive Molly any longer of the chance to deplore how thin you are.
Yes. All right, end of chapter. That was fun. Fun chapter. Fun new character. Got 2 new characters until now. We got Slughorn and new Minister Lionhead. What's his face? Get his name. One thing I'm just realizing, the invisibility cloak must wrap up real small if it fits in Harry's robes. Less a cloak, more like a silk robe. True that, true that.
Here we go. Let's get on with the next chapter. We've got about 15 minutes left.
First, some water.
John's voice is dry. He needs to moisten with some water.
Oh, it's moistened so well. I really did an awesome premonition about what will be the subject of the private teach with Brian. What will be the private subject that he's going to learn about? I was about to say raising the dead, but that's not ever something that Dumbledore would teach. What will he teach him? Well, I don't really know what the danger is, right? So how about... How about... No, wait, no. No, I don't think that's going to happen either. I was thinking maybe being able to, send your consciousness somewhere else and float around and be able to spy on something. But that's kind of already been done in the last book, the dual connection thing. What will they teach him? I don't know yet. I'm going to wait a little bit before we get to the lesson. Yeah, we'll see. Chapter 5. An excess of phlegm. Ooh, love that. Harry and... I think I know what kind of noises are going to be popping up. Harry and Dumbledore approached the back door of the burrow, which was surrounded by the familiar litter of old Wellington boots and rusty cauldrons. Harry could hear the soft clucking of sleepy chickens coming from a distant shelf. Dumbledore knocked 3 times, and Harry saw sudden movement behind the kitchen window. "Who's there?" said a nervous voice that he recognized as Mrs. Weasley's. "Declare yourself!"
"'Tis I, Dumbledore, bringing Harry."
The door opened at once. There stood Mrs. Weasley, short, plump, and wearing an old green dressing gown.
"Oh, Harry, dear! Oh, gracious! Pompous, you gave me a fright. You said not to expect you before morning."
"We were lucky."
said Dumbledore, ushering Harry over the threshold.
Slughorn proved much more persuadable than I had expected. Harry's doing, of course. "Ah, hello, Nymphadora."
Nymphadora? Can't remember who that was. Can't remember. Harry looked around and saw that Mrs. Weasley was not alone, despite the lateness of the hour. A young witch with a pale, heart-shaped face and mousy brown hair was sitting at the table clutching a large mug. "Oh, Tonks, Tonks, Tonks!" between her hands.
"Hello, Professor." "Hello, Professor," she said. "Watcha, Harry."
"Hi, Tonks." Harry thought she looked drawn, even ill. Oh, and there was something forced in her smile. Certainly her appearance was less colorful than usual, without her customary shade of bubblegum pink hair.
"I'd be better off,"
she said quickly, standing up and pulling her cloak around her shoulders.
"Oh, thanks for the tea and sympathy, Molly. Please don't leave on my...
Oh, no.
"Please don't leave on my account,"
said Dumbledore courteously.
"I cannot stay. I have urgent matters to discuss with Rufus Scrimger."
All right, Scrimger. There we go. Tonks Corner.
No, I need to get going,"
said Tonks, not meeting Dumbledore's eyes.
"Night."
"Dear."
Oh,
"Yeah, why not come to dinner at the weekend? Remus and Mad Eye are coming." "No, really, Molly. Thanks anyway. Good night, everyone."
Tonks hurried past Dumbledore and Harry into the yard. A few paces behind the doorsteps, she turned on the spot and vanished into thin air. Harry noticed that Mrs. Weasley looked troubled.
"Well, I shall see you at Hogwarts, Harry.
Said Dumbledore.
Take care of yourself. Molly, your servant."
He made Mrs. Weasley a bow and followed Tonks, vanishing at precisely the same spot. Mrs. Weasley closed the door on the empty yard and then steered Harry by the shoulders into the full glow of the lantern on the table to examine his appearance. Oh, where was he?
"You're like Ron,"
She sighed, looking him up and down.
"Both of you look as though you've had stretched jinxes upon you. I swear, Ron's grown 4 inches since I last bought him school robes. Are you hungry, Harry?"
Yeah, I am, said Harry, suddenly realizing just how hungry he was.
"Sit down, dear. I'll knock something up."
As Harry sat down, a furry ginger cat with a squashed face jumped onto his knees and settled there, purring. "So Hermione's here?" he asked happily, as he tickled Crookshanks behind the ear.
Oh, yes. She arrived the day before yesterday,"
said Mrs. Weasley, wrapping a large iron pot with her wand. It bounced onto the stove with a loud clang and began to bubble at once.
"Everyone's in bed, of course. We didn't expect you for hours. Oh, here you are."
She tapped the pot again. It rose into the air, flew towards Harry, and tipped over. Mrs. Weasley slid a bowl neatly beneath it, just in time to catch the stream of thick, steaming onion soup.
"Bread, dear."
Thanks, Mrs. Weasley." She waved her wand over her shoulder. A loaf of bread and a knife soared gracefully onto the table. As the loaf sliced itself, there were so many buttons I didn't know where to press for the next page. French onion soup. I'm actually really hungry now too. As the loaf sliced itself and the soup pot dropped back onto the stove, Mrs. Weasley sat down opposite him.
So, you persuaded Horace Slughorn to take the job?
Harry nodded, his mouth so full of hot soup that he could not speak.
He taught Arthur me.
Said up Mrs. Weasley.
He was at Hogwarts for ages. Started around the same time as Dumbledore, I think. Did you like him?
His mouth was now full of bread. Harry shrugged and gave a noncommittal jerk of the head.
I know what you mean,
said Mrs. Weasley, nodding wisely.
Of course, he can be charming when he wants to be, but Arthur's never liked him much. The ministry's littered with Slughorn's old favourites. He was always good at giving leg-ups, but he never had much time for Arthur. Didn't seem to think he was enough of a high flyer. Well, that just shows you, even Slughorn makes mistakes. I don't know whether Ron's told you in any of his letters. It's only just happened, but Arthur's been promoted.
Oh, she's great. I love her. It could not have been clearer that Mrs. Weasley had been bursting to say this. Harry swallowed a large amount of very hot soup and thought he could feel his throat blistering. What? Oh, that's great, he gasped.
Oh, you are sweet,
beamed Mrs. Weasley, possibly taking his watering eyes for emotion at the news.
Yes! Rufus Scrimgeour has set up several new offices in response to the present situation, and Arthur's heading the office for the detection and confiscation of counterfeit defensive spells and protective objects. Oh, it's a big job. He's got 10 people reporting to him now.
What exactly?
Well, you see, in all the panic about you-know-who, odd things have been cropping up for sale everywhere. Things that are supposed to guard against you-know-who and the Death Eaters. You can imagine the kind of thing, so-called protective potions that are really gravy with a bit of boba pus added. Or instructions for defensive jinxes that actually made your ears fall off. Well, in the main, the perpetrators are just people like Mundungus Fletcher, who've never done an honest day's work in their lives and are taking advantage of how frightened everybody is. But every now and then, something really nasty turns up. The other day, Arthur confiscated a box of cursed sneaker scopes that were almost certainly planted by the Death Eater. So you see, it's a very important job. And I tell him it's just silly to miss dealing with spark plugs and toasters and all the rest of that muggle rubbish.
Mrs. Weasley ended her speech with a stern look, as if it had been Harry suggesting that it was natural to miss spark plugs. Is Mr. Weasley still at work? Harry asked.
Yes, he is. As a matter of fact, he's a tiny bit late. He said he'd be back around midnight.
Doesn't she have that clock thing that tells her what's going on with him? Something like that? What time is it? Okay. Ugh, I almost felt a burp. Almost. She turned to look at a large clock that was perched awkwardly. All right, here we go. On top of a pile of sheets in the washing basin at the end of the table. Harry recognized it at once. It had 9 hands, each inscribed with the name of a family member, and usually hung on the Weasley sitting room wall, though its current position suggested that Mrs. Weasley had taken to carrying it around the house with her. Oh, she's so... I love how much they love each other. It's great. You can just tell. He's like, oh, no. Every single one of its 9 hands was now pointing at mortal peril. What? Oh, no.
It's been like that for a while now,
said Mrs. Weasley in an unconvincingly casual voice.
Ever since you-know-who came back into the open. I suppose everybody's in mortal peril now. I don't think it can be just for our family. But I don't know anyone else who's got a clock like this, so I can't check. Oh!
With a sudden exclamation, she pointed at the clock's face. Mrs. Weasley's hand had switched to traveling.
Oh, he's coming!
She's so sweet. And sure enough, a moment later, there was a knock on the back door. Mrs. Weasley jumped up and hurried to it, with one hand on the doorknob and her face pressed against the word. She called softly,
Arthur, is that you?
Yes,
came Mr. Weasley's weary voice. Oh, weary.
I would say that even if I were a Death Eater, dear, ask the question.
Oh, honestly?
Molly?
All right. What is your dearest ambition?
To find out how aeroplanes stay up.
This dude. Hey, buddy pal, where'd he go? Dexter? Oh, he's lying on the floor over there again. Oh, he just loves humans. He doesn't understand technology. Mrs. Weasley nodded and turned the doorknob, but apparently Mr. Weasley was holding tight to it on the other side because the door remained firmly shut.
Molly, I've got to ask you your question first.
Arthur, really? This is just silly.
What do you like me to call you when we're alone together?
Wait, here we go.
Molly, we've been alone in this room for a while, making passionate love. My sweet, sweet porcupine.
Oh, stop it. Stop it, Mr. Weasley. Oh, you're naughty, aren't you?
Well, it's about time we've had our alone time, because all the kids are out of the house. You know, we could try that thing we wanted to try.
Hey, I don't know. I don't know. Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, baby. Oh, my little porcupine, we can do whatever you want.
Oh, Mr. Weasley, no.
This is odd. They do have 7 children, yeah. They're going at it like rabbits. Are you kidding me? 7 children? Hey, buddy, come here. Come here. Oh, he's just standing there looking at me. Don't worry, we'll be done soon. What does he call her? Even by the dim light of the lantern, Harry could tell that Mrs. Weasley had turned bright red. He himself had
Oh, Mr. Weasley, stop it. Not in front of Harry.
Felt suddenly warm around the ears and neck, and hastily gulped soup, clattering his spoon as loudly as he could against the bowl.
Molly Wobbles,
Whispered a Molly Wobbles. Molly Wobbles. Whispered a mortified Mrs. Weasley into the crack at the edge of the door.
Molly Wobbles.
Correct,
Said Mr. Weasley.
now you can let me in.
Mrs. Weasley opened the door to reveal her husband, a thin, balding, red-haired wizard, wearing horn-rimmed spectacles and a long and dusty traveling cloak.
I still don't see why we have to go through that every time we come home.
Said Mrs. Weasley, still pink in the face as she helped her husband out of the cloak.
I mean, a Death Eater might have forced the answer out of you before impersonating you.
I know, dear, but it's ministry procedure, and I have to set an example. Something smells good. Onion soup?
Mr. Weasley turned hopefully in the direction of the table.
Oh, Harry! Oh, we didn't expect you until morning.
They shook hands, and Mr. Weasley dropped into the chair beside Harry, as Mrs. Weasley set a bowl of soup in front of him, too.
Oh, thanks, Molly. It's been a tough night. Tough night. Some idiots started selling metaphor medals. Just sling them around your neck and you'll be able to change your appearance at will. 100,000 geysers, all for 10 galleons.
What really happens when you put them on?
Mostly, you just turn a fairly unpleasant orange colour. But a couple of people have also sprouted tentacle-like warts all over their bodies, as if St. Mungo's didn't have enough to do already.
They have 9 kids. She knows she adopted Hermione and Harry in her head. True that. Ah, my gosh. Yeah, after this little scene, I'm gonna have to stop, but I'll finish the scene. It sounds like the sort of thing Fred and George would find fun.
It sounds like the sort of thing that Fred and George would find funny,
said Mrs. Weasley hesitantly.
Are you sure?
Of course I am,
said Mr. Weasley.
The boys wouldn't do anything like that now. Not when people are desperate for protection.
So, is that why you're like metaphor medals?
No, we got wind of a nasty backfiring jinx down in Elephant and Castle. But luckily, the magical law enforcement squad had sorted it out by the time we got there.
Harry stifled a yawn behind his hand.
Bed,
said an undeceived Mrs. Weasley at once.
I've got Fred and George's room all ready for you. You'll have it to yourself.
Why? Where are they?
Oh, they're in Diagon Alley, sleeping in the little flat over their joke shop as they're so busy,
said Mrs. Weasley.
I must say, I didn't approve at first, but they do seem to have a bit of flair for business. Come on, dear, your trunk's already up there.
Night, Mr. Weasley, said Harry, pushing back his chair. Crookshanks leapt lightly from his lap and slunk out of the room.
Good night, Harry,
said Mr. Weasley. Harry saw Mrs. Weasley glance at the clock in the washing basket as they left the kitchen. All the hands were, once again, at mortal peril. All right, we'll end it there. Fun couple of scenes. I love all these different characters. I'm so sad that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley aren't in the books more. It was like somewhere in the beginning, some in the end. Maybe they pop up in the middle somewhere, but I just like those characters so much I want them to be around more. What do we got here? Hermione's not an adopted kid. Hermione's just the one their son clearly has a crush on. Quite clearly. Somebody got off work. They moved out. Oh man, important nobody. I read your comment right after John's bow chicka wow scene. I read he got off work and she had a headache. Alright, friends. So, just to remind you, I'm not back tomorrow. Reading on Friday again. Tomorrow there'll be no reading. Just on Friday. I'm gonna be I have an ice cream maker. I'm gonna be making some more chocolate mint ice cream today. And this time I've got 2 different recipes I wanted to try. The first one was just simple, throw stuff together. This one has to do with putting 6 eggs in and so on and so forth. And like, yeah. So it's gonna be I think it's gonna be creamier ice cream hopefully. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Okay, friends. I will see you on Friday. Hope you have a good evening. Much love to you. If you feel like it, go to Fail Army and watch some good fails. I still, want to organize stuff so I can show you my favorite videos sometime during the stream. Maybe at the beginning or the end. What do you think? Should I show you my, like, just, not like a full one, just like my favorite short 30-second video or something like that of the week or of the day? Should I start at the beginning of the stream or at the very end? You let me know. At the end. I got one for the end. Thank you very much, John. These moments are priceless. Love on your face. Thank you, Max. Appreciate that. And we got votes for the end. Okay, friends. Bye-bye now. See you later, conquistadors. Oh, and if you want to go on the Discord, it's in the link in the bio. We also have a little community there.